In a dimly lit room thick with tension, Han's eyes widened in surprise as he confronted Sungtae, revealing that he had seen through the carefully crafted act of stuttering and limping. In a shadowed room heavy with betrayal, Han stood trembling, anguish etched across his face as he confronted the realization that he had been deceived for 5 long years. On a flickering screen filled with distorted images, Han stared in bewilderment, his mind racing as he tried to piece together what could have transpired during the lost year after Jintae's death. In a tense, shadowed room, Han's grip tightened around his phone as a surge of fury flashed across his face. Then, sweat beading on his brow, he shouted in frustration, demanding that Hyung stop the charade and end the ridiculous act. Under a relentless downpour, Han stood alone with rain streaking down his face, gripped by disbelief as he demanded over the phone what Sungtae meant, insisting that he had thought the terrible news couldn't be true. In the dim hush of a hospital room, Sungtae sat upright in his bed, his head wrapped in bandages as a single shaft of light revealed the disbelief shadowing his contemplative face. Han confessed that he thought Sungtae had already suffered enough for his mistakes and that he had done nothing wrong. Han gripped his phone tightly, sweat beading on his brow as he demanded to know just how much further the situation was meant to escalate. Sungtae until he sees the end of it. Han stood alone in an empty building, his voice echoing with desperate questions as he searched for Sungtae. Sungtae finally say in an empty building. On a rain-soaked street, Han stood beneath the relentless downpour, his voice tense as he demanded information over the phone, anxiety sharpening every word. Han froze in terror, the weight of a dreadful realization breaking across his face as he stammered in disbelief that this could not possibly be true. Han stood tense and uncertain, gripping his phone tightly at his side as he quietly said he hoped it's not that place. On a rain-lashed street, Han burst into the glow of a parked taxi, urgency etched across his face as he pleaded with the driver to take him to Weizong City. In the dim back seat of a car, Han sat curled in on himself, anxiety tightening around him as he wondered how Kim Sungtae could possibly know the very place where he had once been imprisoned, all while the watchful eyes of the taxi driver revealed a growing sense of concern. Gripping his shoulder with growing unease, Han silently speculated that perhaps the source of this threat was someone harboring a grudge against him, maybe Director Yoon, or possibly another unknown adversary, his mind racing with suspicion as sweat prickled his brow. Under a brooding, cloud-filled sky where twin church steeples pierced the gloom, a tense air lingered as Han revealed that Hyunkyung and Director Yoon had once been rivals in the same orphanage, now raising the suspenseful question of whether Sungtae had discovered their secret himself or if someone had tipped him off. In a dimly lit room thick with suspicion, Han stood pensively among 2 shadowy figures, quietly contemplating whether someone near him might be tied to Director Yoon and Jintae. Han closed his eyes and pressed his hand to his forehead, the weight of revelation settling over him as he finally understood that if Hyunkyung was truly Kim Sungtae, everything that had puzzled him now fell into place. Han finally admitted to himself the truth he had long refused to face. Han stared ahead in deep contemplation, his mind turning over the unsettling thought that if Hyup had truly shared the same orphanage as Sungtae, there must be a reason he had pretended not to know him. Han sat alone in his car, exhaustion clouding his features as he resolved to set aside his worries for another time. Han sat with tense determination, his fist clenched and eyes fixed ahead as he told himself that meeting Kim Sungtae was now his only priority. Rain pattered steadily over the deserted construction site as Han stood alone, his voice cutting through the gloom to announce with quiet resolve that they had arrived. Rain fell softly as Han stood before the unfinished, scaffold building, a wave of nostalgia washing over him as he quietly observed that nothing about the place had changed since the past, its construction still frozen in time. Stepping inside, Han moved cautiously down the dim, creaking staircase, his unease growing as the air thickened with the unmistakable scent of mold from the basement below. As Han made it downstairs he yells out to Sungtae. Sungtae glanced to the side with a calm composure tinged by surprise, noting to Han that he had arrived earlier than expected. In a dimly lit, isolated room heavy with tension, Han seized Sungtae by the jacket and furiously demanded to know how he could stage such a deception, insisting that Sungtae had orchestrated the meeting and was responsible for his imprisonment. Sungtae glanced downward with a confident, enigmatic smile, his mysterious aura deepening as he mused aloud that no one could truly know the answer. Tension sharpened as Han seized Sungtae by the collar, confronting him at close range and demanding to know if suspicion had fallen on him, while Sungtae, maintaining a calm exterior, questioned why anyone would doubt someone who had always appeared so pitiable. Sungtae tells Han that he's grown a lot, but Han has stayed the same since day one. Sungtae stood alone, his gaze lowered and a rod gripped in his hands, as he quietly admitted that witnessing someone remain unchanged over time once led him to a profound realization. Sung-tae's youthful face remained calm as he revealed with a knowing look that in ancient times, those who never aged were often suspected of being vampires who drained the life from others. In a realm shrouded by darkness, a figure emerged from the shadows, his menacing presence echoing the tales that painted such beings as monsters meant to terrify children and be hunted as if cursed by the gods. On a quiet afternoon, Sung-tae sat alone on the floor, his gaze lingering on an open book as a wave of sympathy washed over him for those burdened by the Highlander syndrome. In the charged stillness of the room, Sung-tae's unwavering gaze fixed on Han as he calmly accused him of being utterly ruthless, insisting that unlike others, Han had drained everything away without mercy. Han stood rigid and wary, his brow damp with sweat as he demanded to know what the other person truly meant. On a rain-soaked street shrouded in tension, Sung-tae advanced toward Han with a hostile glare, brandishing a large umbrella like a weapon as he demanded to know what it felt like to possess a flawless body gained through sacrifice. Han stood in profile, his confusion evident as he questioned what sacrifice could possibly be meant. The uncertainty lingered as Sung-tae's lips parted in the somber light, quietly calling out Jin-tae's name with a trace of pleading hope. Han's eyes blazed with fury as he confronted Sung-tae, demanding through clenched teeth what right they had to even mention Jin-tae's name. Sung-tae says that Jin-tae's death was because of Han. Han stood sweating and distressed, confronting Sung-tae as he demanded to know if Sung-tae's hatred for Jin-tae ran that deep. Sung-tae sat calmly and, with sincere honesty, revealed that he had never harbored hatred toward Jin-tae. Against a backdrop heavy with tension, Han lifted his gaze, desperation etched across his face as he demanded to know why it had happened and begged for reassurance that everything was just a misunderstanding. On a stained floor littered with sharp objects, the heavy silence was shattered by a desperate plea for someone to insist that the events of that day were nothing more than an accident, the air thick with tension and unspoken trauma. Sung-tae loomed above with a brooding intensity, his eyes fixed downward as he challenged whether every action truly required justification. Han stood rooted in place, his posture betraying a quiet vulnerability as he pleaded for a reason that might keep resentment at bay. In a dimly lit hallway thick with tension, Sung-tae gripped Han's shoulder and confronted him with a sharp question, demanding to know why reason seemed to matter only when convenient, leaving Han visibly confused and searching for an answer. In a quiet, sunlit room, Sung-tae makes a serious face as he wrapped his arms around Han from behind, his voice warm as he reassured him that he saw the resilience of a phoenix within him. Sung-tae pressed his hand firmly onto Han's shoulder, thoughtfully emphasizing that this was not a phoenix charred black like the others. Then, as anticipation hung in the air, a radiant red phoenix burst forth among glowing embers, its blazing form embodying a majestic promise unlike anything seen before. Mid a stark white void, a blazing phoenix loomed as Sung-tae, resolute and unyielding, condemned Han as a traitor and declared that such a phoenix must be consigned to the flames. Han froze mid-step, anxiety flickering in his eyes as he sensed Sung-tae's menacing presence closing in tightly from behind and managed a startled, uncertain greeting. The weight of that encounter pressed on as Han, half-shrouded in shadow against a dark, ominous backdrop, silently wrestled with the desperate thought of what it would take to bring Jin-tae back from death. Midst the roaring blaze devouring the club, Han stood resolute with a gas canister in hand as an accusing voice declared that he had set everything on fire.